Since Election Day, Donald Trump has explained his popular vote loss to Hillary Clinton by claiming that millions of people committed voter fraud and cast their ballots illegally. This is a lie, but it's what the Nazis called a big lie, a lie you can repeat enough times that people just start believing it's true. Big lies always serve a purpose, and for Trump and the Republicans, the big lie of voter fraud has always been a way for them to justify voter suppression. This was proven once again today, when Donald Trump announced the creation of a federal election integrity commission led by a guy my next guest has dubbed the Al Capone of voter suppression. Joining me now is that guy, Greg Palast, investigative reporter and creator of a new documentary, a great documentary called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, a tale of billionaires and ballot bandits. Greg Palast, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be with you, Sam.
So, Greg, I want to start off by playing a clip of White House Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders describing this Election Integrity Commission.
The bipartisan commission will be made up of around a dozen members, including current and former secretaries of state, with Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach serving as vice chair. It will also include individuals with knowledge and experience in elections, election management, election fraud detection, and voter integrity efforts.
So she makes this commission sound, straightforward, rational, not too unreasonable, but it's really anything but that, correct? This is a glorified justification for voter purges in the future, isn't it?
Well, this is the important thing that's been missed, Sam, and I'm glad you brought it up. Look, it's not just that when Trump says the election's rigged and millions of people have voted illegally, okay, if he's in cloud cuckoo land and he's saying, crazy stuff, so what? But here's so what, Sam. This is all a specific cover to allow specific means of purging the voter rolls. For example, no one was really listening to Trump when he said millions of people are voting twice, okay? Trump is saying people are voting many, many times. They're voting in 2 states at once. People are not listening to his particular accusations. Now, where does that come from? It comes from this guy, Kris Kobach, the guy they've put in charge of this investigation. Now, for Rolling Stone magazine and Al Jazeera, and for my film, I hunted down this guy, Kris Kobach, because he claimed he had the names of, are you ready for this? He has the names of the 3 million people suspected of voting twice. He has a list of 7 million names, 3.5 million pairs. Now, no one would give me that list. He wouldn't give me that list, but, you can see the hat. I'm an investigative reporter, so I got the list. I know who he's claiming are double voters. People like, for example, James Brown. 288 guys named James Brown in Georgia. He's accused of voting a second time in another state. How does he know? Because he found people named James Brown voting in other states, believe it or not. And by the way, on the list, I have the list. You can see that he says James Thomas Brown is the same voter as James Edward Brown. James Brown Jr. is supposed to be the same voter as James Brown Sr. I can't make this up. This guy has this list, and if he just had some crazy list, I wouldn't care. The problem is he's the voting chief of the state of Kansas, and he's gotten 30 Republican GOP secretaries of state who run the votes to begin purging voters from the voter rolls based on this phony double voter list. And now he's in charge of investigating the election that he rigged. It's like asking Al Capone to investigate the mob.
Let me stop you real quick, because we've got video here. You actually confronted Kobach about Crosscheck, this system he set up to identify double voters that actually ends up identifying 2 different people who might have similar last names. You confronted him for your film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Here's a clip.
What is the point of sending a card to James Evans Johnson to prove that he is not James P. Johnson? What's the point of sending him a card?
That should not be an individual who's deemed a match.
Excuse me, but you say ignore the matches. You tell people to go. You tell the states. This is you, right? Kansas Secretary of State. You're the Kansas Secretary of State. This is you. How come you have these as the same voter, potentially the same voter?
Our system would not yield them.
This is from your system.
But his system did target Johnson. All these are his matches.
This is the list you gave Virginia, and on the basis of this list, you know that Virginia removed 41,000 voters?
You make Kris Kobach there look like a fool, Greg, but the problem here is he won. He succeeded. His program, Crosscheck, helped get Donald Trump elected, and now he's getting a promotion to do this perhaps nationally.
Well, that's the big problem. In other words, he's already moved it to 30 states. Kris Kobach's list was used to remove over 50,000 people in the state of Michigan, mostly voters of color. Because remember, it's common names. 24 voters named Mohammed, the most common name in the world, were removed from the voter rolls in Columbus, Ohio, a swing state. We had almost 500,000 suspects on Kobach's list in the swing state of Ohio. Virginia removed 41,161 people from the list, from the voter rolls, based on Kobach's say-so. So this system of rigging elections is in place. So the master rigger has been put in charge of investigating the rigging. Like I say, it's Al Capone investigating the mob. And by the way, he'll be joined in his partner in voter crime by a guy named Ken Blackwell, the Secretary of State of Ohio. You'll remember him. He's the guy who basically fixed the vote for George W. Bush in Florida in 2004. You remember those long lines? That was a Ken Blackwell special. In fact, they were back this year with the new GOP Secretary of State of Ohio. I was in those lines, 5-6 hours waiting in line in the black precincts. In the white precincts, there were lines. It was voting officials waiting for the voters. They actually had more officials than voters in the white precincts of Toledo, yet in the in the black precincts, hours of wait. This game doesn't end. This is the guys that they're going to have on the panel to determine if the vote was rigged. And watch out. They're going to say there are double voters. They're going to say there are alien voters, you know, swimming the Rio Grande to vote. And remember, Kris Kobach is the guy who wrote the driving while brown law, SB 1070 in Arizona, which was not, you know, supposedly to catch illegal aliens in Arizona. In fact, it was to harass Mexican-American voters. And in fact, his client, it is Joe Arpaio, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who is charged with racism, criminal racism, by the Justice Department. His lawyer is Kris Kobach. This is the guy who created the program for Arpaio.
So Trump signs this executive order today, creating this commission. A lot of people will say, oh, he's doing this to distract from the Russia stuff. Actually, he could be doing this while the Russia stuff distracts from his move to, create justification for more voter restrictions down the road. This commission is going to produce a report next year. Game this out. What might they jam in this thing to justify more restriction measures down the road?
I actually am waiting on a document, a secret document that Kris Kobach gave to Donald Trump. One thing I know about what's in the document.
Is this what he was photographed with?
Yeah, the one he was photographed with. We're supposed to get it tomorrow, but the president himself ordered Kris Kobach to defy a judge's order to turn over this document. But I know it's in it. I know it's in it because I've been hunting Kobach for years now for Rolling Stone. And what's in that, what he wants to do is require everyone to prove you're a citizen before you vote. Now, that may sound reasonable, Sam, but it's not, because the only proof of citizenship we have in America, because it's not Red China, you don't carry citizenship cards. The only proof is your passport, and you know how many homies have that, and your original birth certificate. Good luck in finding it. Kris Kobach removed 36,000 students in Kansas from the voter rolls, wouldn't let them register because they couldn't prove they were citizens. A federal judge says, there's not one illegal voter in this pile, not one alien, Mr. Kobach. Put their names back on. So what he has to do to keep these names off and do this nationwide, keeping out students, keeping out the poor, keeping out people without passports, is by having Trump amend the National Voter Registration Act, or the Motor Voter Law, as it's called, and they're going to make Crosscheck, the hunt for double voters, the law of the nation, which means making thievery of your vote the law of the nation.
Does it surprise you how little attention Crosscheck has received? I mean, I've seen you on MSNBC a few times talking about this, but as far as the cable news networks go and the newspapers go, that's about it. Obviously, Russia's alleged election interference dominates the news, and it's always talked about in terms of if we don't do something about it now, they'll do it again in 2018, they'll do it again in 2020. You've been following Republican operatives trying to rig elections since 2000, since before that. And they're going to do this again in 2018 and 2020, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and the big problem is, of course, MSNBC and the others tend to follow what the Democratic Party is saying. And the Democratic Party is pretty much silent, except for the Congressional Black Caucus. Yes, I'm on some mainstream shows where they have, where they're hosts of color, but the pale-face hosts, other than RT, thank you, you're not going to get this information. This is the problem. They're running around saying that Trump is crazy by saying that there are millions of illegal voters. He's crazy like a fox. He's crazy in that this becomes the cover story for removing people accused of double voting. It's like the Red Scare, but now it's the illegal voter scare. And they don't exist, but they're going to have these methods. Prove you're a citizen. Prove you're not a double voter. How do you do that? How does, for example, in my film, I meet a guy named Daniel Alexander Webster. He had to prove that he's not Daniel Eugene Webster Jr., voting in another state. How do you prove you're not that other guy with a different name? They take away your vote. By the way, you don't even know if your vote is taken away. 1.1 million people lost their right to vote because of interstate crosscheck. Not one was arrested for voting twice, this crime, but they lost their right to vote, and they didn't know it because they don't tell you if the reason your vote isn't counting is because you're on Kris Kobach's list. That's what's so devious. And once again, do not count on the Democratic Party to raise their voice on these things. They've never stood up on racial vote suppression issues. They are missing. If it's black voters at stake, they don't care.
I hear you, Greg, 100%. People need to listen to what you're saying. They need to check out your movie, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, A Tale of Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're the best, Sam. Thanks.
And that's the way it is tonight. Don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it.